Hey, Algebra 2, I'm doing a puzzle for the test review for just day 2, not doing day 1. If you have questions about day 1, come and see me at the times that I have posted in Google Classroom. If you go to Google Classroom, you'll see that I have posted times I'm available here. 7th period to Tuesday, 1 to 2:30, Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. And you guys can also come by during lunch, okay? Because I won't be available after school on Monday. Or after school on Tuesday because I have appointments. You're welcome also to come early in the morning on Tuesday as well if you want to come at 6:30. All right? So let me get started. Okay, so for this worksheet, the biggest focus is solving the triangles. Okay, we're trying to solve this triangle. So for number 1, and just remember, when we get our answers, round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, 2 places after the decimal. Just keep that in mind as we work through this problem. Okay, so for number 1, the first thing you want to try is law of sines. Try that first, and then if you can't do that, then you want to try law of cosines. Okay, so first let's try to set up law of sines. In order to do that, I need a pair of an angle and an opposite side, and I have one, so I can set that up. Now again, be careful on how you set it up, because you can put the side on the top of the sine, or the ratio, or you can put it on the angle on the top. In this case, we're going to look for a side. We're going to look for side C. So we're going to put the side on the top, side C, and then the angle opposite that is 105. So we take the sine of that, and then we're going to match that up with a pair that we know, which is the 36 degrees and 28 kilometers. And remember, I put the side on the top, so that means I need to put the other side on the top. And then the angle, or the opposite angle, I will take the sine of below. Now again, just like I told you guys in class, what we're going to do here is cross multiply. But the nice thing is I can just take this sine of 105 and place it up there and multiply it times 28. So now when I rewrite this, it will be C equals sine 28 times the sine of 105 divided by sine of 36. Now some of you guys were asking me in class, well, what's the best way to practice this at home? Like, what calculator should I use? Well, what I would do is, if you don't have one, or a graphing calculator, is go to Google and just type in calculator. So calculator. And as you type in calculator, you'll see it pop up. And don't use the Google calculator, but use the one right below it, that first link that says Web 2.0, scientific calculator. This one's going to best help you more than the other one, okay, and able to set these up. Okay, so now the first problem is going to be 28 sine of 105 divided by sine of 36. So 28, oops, let's bring this down here, bring it up here so we can get it out the way. 28, and then sine, 28 times sine of, what was that, of 105, and parentheses around that, and then divided by sine of, what was that, 36? That's 36. Oops. Backspace. And you can backspace by clicking this little backspace button. 36, and then parentheses. And what you'll notice is that up above, it sets it up for you. So you can see that you did it correctly. Okay, so then that way I can see that that matches up with how I wrote it down. Okay, go ahead and press enter. And I get 46.01. We'll round that to nearest hundredth, so 0.01. 46.01. Okay, that's side C. Okay, but I still need to find side A and then angle A. All right. Okay, well, I know angle A. I can find that because I know that the angles of a triangle add up to 180. So 180 minus 36 plus 105 that in the calculator. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to move to this. Okay, clear this. So now it'll be 180 minus, parentheses, what was that? 36 and 105. So 36 plus 105, put that in parentheses, and I get 39. So the difference is 39. So that other angle, angle A, 39 degrees. Okay, there's one. And now the last thing I need to find is side A. Okay, and I just use, again, law of sines to set that up. Zoom out, give myself some room. Okay, I'm looking for a side, so we want the side on the top. And the opposite angle is A, which is 39, so we do sine of 39. And then I just pick a pair that I already know. And I'll use the same one I used in the beginning, 28 over sine of 38, or 36. Okay? And again, do the same thing like we just did before. Cross multiply, and I'll bring up this sine to the top. So now A is equal to 28 times the sine of 39 degrees divided by the sine of 36 degrees. Okay, now let's do that on the calculator. So now clear that. 28 times the sine of, what was that? 39, sine of 39 over sine of 36. So sine of 39 divided by sine of 36. Oops, not 39. 36. And just to double check is make sure I set it up right. Look at how it's laid out. It looks good. And so my answer is 29.97, but then the 8's going to make me round up 1, so 29.98. So then A is equal to 29.98 kilometers. Remember, it's measured in kilometers. And we're done. Okay? Now the next triangle, you will solve that the same way. You do it the same way because it's the same situation. We have two angles and one side. So again, you have this pair. There's your first pair. That's the one you're going to set up the sine with. So I'll set up the first one, but I want you guys to do that on your own. So again, I have a pair there, so I'm going to go ahead and set it up. But first of all, let's start with the side that we're looking for. This is little b. We're going to have to look for little b, little c, and angle A. Okay, and let's start with little b because we already know its opposite angle. So we're going to put the b on the top, equal to the pair that we know. 22, again, side on the top, over sine of 48. Okay, and then you solve that the same way like we just did before. Okay, so let's go to number 3. Okay, so now number 3, this time we have two sides and then an angle. Okay, well again, I've got a pair, so I know I can use law of sines here. Okay, so that means I need to look for little b, angle b, and angle C. Okay, so let's start off with little b. It's always easier to find the sides first and then find the angles last. So that's why I always start with the sides, if I can. Okay, and now if you notice, I've got a problem because usually I put this over the sine of whatever the angle B is, but I don't know the angle. So, that's a problem, isn't it? So I only know one pair, so that means I can't choose that side to find. But I do know, the only other piece of information I do know is this 13. So in this case, looks like I'll have to find the angle C. Okay, because I have angle C and then its opposite side. So that's the only one I can look for first. So now sine of C over 13 yards. Remember, I'm looking for the angle, so I want the sine on top this time. And then now the sine of 91 degrees over its opposite side, 32. Okay, now again, the first couple steps are the same. Cross multiply. That means I'm going to bring this 13 up here. So now it's the sine of c equals 13 times sine of 91 degrees over 32. But now, what I need to do here is that once I get to the point where I just have sine on this side of the angle, I will do the sine inverse of this value, whatever it is. 13 times sine of 91 degrees. And that will give you my angle C. So again, once you get to this point where you just have sine of the angle by itself equal to some value, or this expression here, you're going to take the inverse sine of that value, and that will give you angle C. So let's find that. So inverse sine of 13 times sine of 91 degrees over 32. So again, we need to pick the correct one here. So we're going to do sine inverse. If you notice, it's the negative one there. So in this calculator, I have to push second to get to that sign. Okay, and on this calculator, they call it a sine, which also means arc sine, which is the same thing. Okay, so arc sine of 13 times the sine of 91. We want to get rid of that. You see, I have to go back and forth, so I have to push the second again to get back to the regular sine. Oops. Forgot I got to do 13 times sine, so that it doesn't think I'm doing sine of 13. 91. And all that divided by, I believe, 32. Let me just double check. Yep, 32. And then look how it's set up and make sure it's exactly what you want. And yep, we have the inverse sine of 13 times sine of 91 degrees divided by 32. And it's calculating. It's calculating. I don't know what happened, but I just retyped it again. And I didn't change anything, but for some reason there was an error. But anyways, there's our angle, 23.9, and we'll round that 6 up to 7, so 23.97. Okay, so there's our first angle, 23.97. Okay, but remember, first we're looking for angle C, we're looking for angle B, and for side B. So we have an angle, and we can find the other angle by just simply doing 180 minus the other two angles added up, or the sum of the other two angles. Okay, so let's just add that up real quick. Okay, so now let's do 180 minus C's 91 plus 23.97 equals 65.03. Okay, so there's our angle B. (65.03 degrees). Now we just need to find side B. And this is where we can just use, again, sine. So law of sines. We're looking for angle B, and the opposite angle is 65.03, so sine of 65.03. And that's going to be, we're going to use the pair of 32 over 91. So we'll put sine of 91 there. And again, we're going to cross multiply, so we'll just move that sine of 65.03 to the right. And we get 32 times sine of 65.03 over sine of 91. That will tell us our last side. Okay, so let's clear this. Okay, so now we're going to do, 32 times sine of 65.03. 32 times sine of 65.03 button, of 65.03 divided by the sine of 91. Oops, 91. Okay, and that is our side B, 29.01. And that's in yards. So we make sure we note that as yards. 29.01 yards. Okay. All right. There we go. There's our answers. Got there, there, and there. Okay. Now the next one. This one is a lot like our first one. We had two angles and a side. However, the difference here is that there's no pair here. There is no pair there. And there's no pair there. So if there's no pairs, this is where we have to use the sign. I'm sorry, law of cosines. Okay, so again, we're missing little b, we're missing little a, and we're missing angle C. Okay, so let's write that down. Make sure that's what we look for. Angle C, side A, and side B. Okay, so we know when these angles, we know two of the angles, so we can find angle C easily by doing 180. So minus the others, or the sum of the others. Okay, so 180 minus 94 plus 23. We get 63. So first angle is 63 degrees. Okay, so now we just need to find that little a and little b. Okay, so now we've got a pair. So now we can just use that there. So actually we don't need law of cosines here. Okay, so now 25 meters over sine of 63 degrees equals, and we'll go ahead and find side A first. So put that sine of 23 over sine of 23 because the 23 is the opposite angle. And now we'll cross multiply. And again, I have A over here, so I can just multiply this sine of 23 and put it up here. If you notice, I started with A on the right instead of the left, like I did before with the variable, but that's okay, you can switch it. 25 times sine of 23 degrees divided by the sine of 63 degrees equals our A. So let's go ahead and plug that in. And I'll put A back here on the left once we figure that out. So 25 times the sine of, 23 over the sine of 63 divided by the sine of 63. 66, 63. Looks good. So we'll go ahead and press enter or equals, and I get 10.96. There's our side A. 10.96 meters. So make sure you say the correct measurement or notation. And the last one we need is B. Okay, so again we'll set up our sines, or law of sines formula. And B is opposite of angle 94. So we'll do sine of 94. And then we'll go ahead and use that first pair I used, the 25 and 63. So 25 over the sine of 63 degrees. Cross multiply, bring that sine up there. And now 25 times the sine of 94 degrees divided by sine of 63 degrees. Okay, so now 25 times the sine of, what was that again? 94 divided by the sine of 63 degrees. Okay, 27.99. So B is 27.99 meters. 27.99 meters. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's take a look and find one where we have to find with cosine, and that would be these cases here. Okay, here's a case. Let's compare it to the first one. We've got two sides and an angle. Did we have that before? No, the other ones we had two angles and a side. Here we had two sides and an angle. So yes, there was another case where we had two sides and an angle. However, in this case we had a pair, a side with an opposite angle. However, in this case where we just have two sides and an angle, we don't have a pair. So the angle C does not have a side opposite of it. Okay, so here we're going to need to find C. We're going to need to find angle A and angle B. Okay, so now this is the case where I definitely am going to have to use the law of cosines. Okay, and since I know an angle already, I'm going to want to use that angle in my first step. Okay, so that's the one I'm going to want to plug in. So if I have the angle C, that I'll set everything equal to little c, or side c. Because remember, it's going to be c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus that same a and b times 2, so 2ab, times the cosine of whatever you set it equal to, that same opposite angle. So if you set it equal to little c, you're going to do the cosine of big C. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug all that in. Okay, so we don't know little c. We know A is 24, and we're going to square it. Oops. And then we're going to add 24 to 26 squared minus 2 times those same sides, 24 times 26 times the cosine of 134 is our angle. Now the nice thing is, once you get to this point, since we know all these values on the right side, there's no variables here. We know the last step is going to be taking the square root. So to solve this, I can simply just square root this right now and plug all of that into the calculator without having to simplify and do all the steps. Okay, so now I'm going to plug all that into the calculator. See if I can get a split screen here. Aha! Perfect. Okay, so let's move this over so I can see it. Okay, so again, first let's do square root. There's my square root. And then we're going to do 24 squared plus 26 squared minus 2 times 24 times 26, and then times the cosine of, oh, it doesn't like that. Okay, so I have to do times here to make sure it recognizes that I want to cosine on the inside of the square root of 134. And there we go. Okay, then double check, look at how it laid it out, make sure it's exactly how you want it. And I've got 24 squared plus 26 squared minus 2 times 24 times 26 times cosine of 134. Looks good. And then up with 46.03. Okay, and this was measured in yards. Okay, so there's our C, 46.03. And the nice thing is, once I found one side, let's see if I can get rid of this. There we go. Once I find one side using the law of cosines, then I don't have to use the law of cosines anymore. Then I can just use law of sines, because now I have a pair. All right, so 46.03. So there's my pair now. So now I still need to find two angles. Okay, so let's look for angle A. So we do sine of A. Remember, if we're looking for the angle, we put the angle sign on the top, and the side opposite, that is 24. And then the pair we're going to use is 134 degrees, and its opposite side, 46.03. And then let's cross multiply. And we're trying to isolate this A, so let's just bring this 24 up here. So now 24 times the sine of 134 divided by 46.03. And remember, again, if we're looking for an angle, we're taking the sine of that angle and it's equal to some value, then we do inverse sine. Inverse sine of that same value, 24, times the sine of 134 divided by 46.03, and that should give us angle A. Okay, so let's plug that in. Zoom up on just that part. Bring up our calculator again. Okay, so now we're going to do the sine inverse. So again, remember, for sine inverse on this calculator, you need to push second, then a sine, which is arc sine, the same thing as sine inverse. And now 24. And I'm going to have to multiply. And in order to get back to the regular functions, I had to push second again. Okay, so then 24 times sine of 134. And all that divided by 46.03. Okay, and that looks good. Looks like it matches what I wrote down. So equals 22.02. So my angle is oh, and let's see, that 8 is actually going to make my 2 round up to 3. So 22.03. So 22.03 degrees. Okay, so now there's my angle, or my first angle. Now I just need one more angle, and that's B. And I can simply find that just by finding the difference of 180 minus the other two angles, 134 plus 22.03. So let's bring up the calculator for that one again. Actually, we'll just split the screen, see if we can do that again. Aha, fancy. Go over to what I was working on. Okay, the 180. Okay, so 180 minus 134 plus 22.03. And it's 23.97 degrees. There's our angle B. So I'll put that up here, 23.97 degrees. And there's our solution. Okay. Okay, and so the next triangle, you would solve that the exact same way. You'd solve that just like you did the number 5. Okay, you set it up just the same way. You have to use the law of cosines and set that up, okay? Okay, let's go to the back page. Okay, number 7 is just like the last one we did as well. Okay, this last few are the ones that are a little different. Okay, so let's actually go down to number 9. Okay, because number 8, number 9, number 10 are all like each other. They're all done the same. Okay, now what we're missing here is we're missing all the angles. So we have no angles. We have all the sides, but no angles in this case. Okay, so we need B, C, and A. So again, here's where we need the law of cosines again. So what you set your law of cosines equal to doesn't matter in this case, at least in the first step. Okay, so I'm just going to choose to set it equal to A. Okay, so I'll make it A squared equals B squared plus C squared. So in other words, it's whatever's left over, B and C, minus 2 times those same letters, B and C, times the cosine of whatever you set it equal to, A. So then I take cosine of big A. So let's go ahead and plug it in. So now 27 squared equals B squared, 25 squared, plus C squared, which is 28 squared, minus 2 times B, which is 25, times C, which is 28, times cosine of angle A, which we do not know. Okay, so now this is where we got to go ahead and solve it all. And we got to solve for A, so we need to isolate A. So let's go ahead and start simplifying. So first, I'm going to do this on a separate calculator. 27 squared, well, that's 729. 25 squared, that's going to be 625, plus 28 squared, 784, minus 2 times 25 times 28, it's going to be 1400 times the cosine of A. Okay, now let's add up 625 and the 784. That's why we have calculators. Some of you saying, oh, these numbers are so big, Mr. Osborne, how could you? Well, that's why we have calculators, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's subtract the 1409 from both sides. 1409. Those two cancel out. And let's see, 729 minus 1409, that's negative 680. Okay, equals negative 1400 cosine of A. And the last thing I need to do here before I do inverse is I need to get rid of this negative 1400. And this time, it's being multiplied times cosine, so I need to divide it. Okay, and I'll divide it to both sides. Okay, so now I'll have cosine of A is equal to, well, remember it's got two negatives here, so those will cancel out. So it'll be equal to 680 over 1400. And now the last step is that, remember, when you're looking for an angle, and if it's like sine of A or cosine of A in this case, you're going to do the inverse of that function. So not cosine of A, but inverse cosine. And you do the inverse cosine of what that is equal to. And cosine of A is equal to 680 over 1400. So you do the inverse of 680 over 400, or over 1400, and that will give us our angle. So now let's go to our online calculator. And now let's do the inverse. So I need to push second on this calculator first. And that gives us arc cosine, which is the same thing as inverse cosine. 680. And we have to go back to the other version. 680 divided by 1400. That looks good up top. Just make sure that looks like what I want it to. Equals 60.94 degrees. 60.94. Sorry about that. 60.94 degrees. And that is angle A. Okay, so I'll put that up here, 60.94 degrees. And remember, now I have a pair. I've got 27 and 60.94. So if that's the case, now I can use sine of cosine. So now let's do set of sine of cosine. I'm going to look for another angle. So sine of, let's look for angle C. And that its opposite side is 28, right here. And then we'll do sine of that angle we just found, 60.94, over its opposite side, 27. And now let's cross multiply. Remember, I can just bring this 28 up to the top here and multiply it. So now I have sine of C equal to 28 times sine of 60.94 divided by 27. And again, here, I'm looking for an angle, sine of an angle, so that means I need to do the inverse sine of this value to the right. So inverse sine of 28 times sine of 60.94 divided by 27, and that is going to give us our angle C. Okay, so C, let's punch that in. So it's sine inverse of 28 let's clear this. Okay, so sine, remember we need to do arc sine on this calculator. Turn the second off, and 28 sine, oops, so we gotta specify that we want it to do 28 times sine, not the sine of 28, and then 6.94, sine of 60.94, and then divide by 27. And then verify up here up top to make sure that looks like what you set up in your problem, and it does. So that equals 65.02. So over here, 65.02 degrees. Okay, now, let's write that up here. So 65.02. And the last angle I've got to find is B. Okay. Well, remember, I've got two angles now. So I know they add up to 180. So if I do 180 minus the sum of both of those angles, then that will give me my last measurement that I need to find. Okay, so that is equal to angle B. Okay, so let's do that last measurement here. Oops. Clear that. Okay, so we're going to do 180 minus 60.94 plus 65.02 and equals 54.04. So our last angle is 54.04 degrees. Okay, I'll write that up top here. Okay, and there is our completed triangle. Okay, and that example will help you solve number 10 and number 8 on this side of the page. So I've given you enough examples to be able to finish the rest of this review. If you guys have any more questions, again, I'm going to be available today on Tuesday, because I'm finishing this recording on Tuesday, during lunch, pretty much, because I have an appointment right after, and I will be available during 7th period as well, from 1 to 2:30. And then on Wednesday in the morning, you guys can come in 7:30 to 8:30 to do kind of a last-minute study session if you'd like. Okay? All right. I will see you guys on Wednesday. Good luck.